Good morning and Merry Christmas to all watching around Australia. My name is Josh from CyclonesOZ and here is your detailed forecast update for December 25th, 2024. We have a lot to get through in today's forecast update, which is why we're making this video. We've had a dramatic shift in terms of rainfall for the southeastern corner of Queensland and into the northeastern corner of New South Wales. Severe thunderstorms also on the forecast of parts of New South Wales and Queensland into the New Year's period, and another heatwave is expected to develop across interior parts of Australia, and also give detailed forecasts for the Sydney to Hobart yacht race and the Boxing Day test over in Victoria. All of that plus more coming up in today's weather forecast. If you are brand new to the channel, please consider subscribing, but let's get stuck straight into things today over in the southeast of Queensland. We're going to quickly get through these severe thunderstorms before we start talking about the more detailed rainfall forecast that we have later on into the forecast period. So throughout the remainder of this week, we're not expecting anything in the way of significant thunderstorms, not at least until Friday, and in fact it's a bit of a stretch to call the thunderstorms that we're going to see on Friday significant. We will see a couple of blobs around the Armidale and Tamworth area and up towards Inverell in the northeastern corner of New South Wales, and then we'll see a couple of thunderstorms as well around the Injune and Taroom area, but you can see nothing crazy is expected in the way of the thunderstorm forecast here. We can pretty much outright the GFS forecast model. They're not very good for thunderstorms, and the Axis G3 as well, not expecting anything major. So Friday's going to be a bit of a bust night in terms of the thunderstorms. There will be a few around, but they're not expected to be severe, and they will also be very few and far between. Conditions for them not looking great. There will still be plenty of instability in the atmosphere, and we're still talking about nearly four-figure values here, which I consider to be pretty good for thunderstorms, especially the further south you get into New South Wales. You can't be shrugging your shoulders and that, and then closer to the coastline they're getting up to about 1600 there, which are some decent values for thunderstorms. Not great, but again, they aren't terrible, that's for sure. Humidity and temperature values as well, not looking too bad for these thunderstorms. It just looks like it might just be a bit of a harder night for these thunderstorms to materialise. I don't think they're going to have the convergence required for some significant thunderstorm activity. So Friday night, not expecting anything crazy. A couple of good thunderstorms here and there, but nothing in the way of major severe thunderstorms. Wouldn't be surprised if one or two went severe warn for heavy rainfall and maybe the odd large hailstone bearing storm around the Tamworth and Armidale area, but again, very hard to say at this time. These thunderstorms will be few and far between, especially those severe ones. Saturday afternoon and evening, we're expecting a more meaty outbreak somewhere between Coffs Harbour right up through the Gold Coast up towards Brisbane, and even extending into the Sunshine Coast, or at least into the mountains adjacent to the Sunshine Coast. And then another outbreak expected extending inland from Kingaroy up through Rolleston and then out towards Emerald. We'll likely see a good line of thunderstorms here bearing the heavy rainfall and damaging winds. These thunderstorms up in the more northern towards the central parts of Queensland, they will be a bit more fast moving, likely upscaling later on into the night into a pretty high precipitation squall mode, but the thunderstorms concentrated into the southeast of Queensland, they are likely to be slow moving, bearing the risk of heavy rainfall, the chance of large hailstones, and also of course with all severe thunderstorms damaging and locally destructive winds. Could be seeing quite a few powerful storms actually adjacent to the Brisbane metro area on Saturday afternoon. We said this yesterday, but further inland for locations especially out of Toowoomba and Kingaroy, some beefy thunderstorms expected there. I mean, Crow's Nest really going to be in the thick of it by the looks of things, these thunderstorms. It's just going to be that sort of stuff over the ranges outside of Brisbane, and the scenic rim of the Gold Coast will likely see some good thunderstorms out there. Again, instability in the atmosphere. It's looking good for these thunderstorms. We've got those four-figure values around here. It's not looking absolutely star-bound amazing, but it is looking pretty good, especially into the southeastern corner of Queensland. The instability values there are sky high, so I'm actually surprised that the forecast models aren't suggesting a major outbreak down there, just considering the instability values. But you can see these thunderstorms here, if they do develop into the northeastern corner of New South Wales, they will have a field day. We'll be seeing some pretty powerful ones there indeed, pretty much guaranteed. The reason why the thunderstorms are going to be developing more in this area, not actually making the most of those very high instability values into the northeast of New South Wales, is just where the surface trough is going to be located, and as such the winds feeding in from the Coral Sea and the Pacific Ocean will be more likely to feed stronger thunderstorms in this sort of area here, extending between Kingaroy up towards Edith Void and Mount Perry, including locations such as Proston and Guyanda. The thunderstorms there likely to be substantially stronger, just considering the way that the winds are going to be feeding into these thunderstorms. That low pressure line is going to be extending through here. If we flick it back to the eastern model rather, you can see the low pressure line going to be extending through here, with that low pressure converging here into the northeastern corner of New South Wales. So again, if thunderstorms do develop there, they'll have a hard time firing up, not because of the instability, but just because of wind shear and the conditions that are going to be available for it. But anywhere else, pretty much into the northeastern corner of New South Wales, down around Grafton and Coffs Harbour, and then further north along that line that we were talking about between Claremont and Emerald, right down to Kingaroy, we'll likely see some beefy thunderstorms there on Saturday night. And then back to the rainfall forecast, you can see Sunday night as well, a similar story. The thunderstorms are going to be forming much further up into the more central locations of Queensland, locations between Billawheeler and up towards Moranbah and Glendon. Some good thunderstorms expected there. And if we cross cross-reference that with the convective available potential energy sky-high values expected. I mean, we're talking about numbers well into the 2400 kind of realm here. In fact, a little bit higher as you get up towards Charters Towers. Up north of Charters Towers, the values are typically very high pretty much year-round. That's just how the tropics work, and that's how you get those sea breeze pulse thunderstorms pretty routinely up there. So convective available potential energy is a little bit more irrelevant around the Charters Towers sort of area, but it is very relevant around the Claremont and Emerald area. And when you see values like this, you know a good outbreak is inbound. Great convergence as well along this trough line that's going to be running basically adjacent to the mountains in the inland from the coastline. There's going to be some really nice thunderstorms firing up along it. The Coral Sea moisture is going to be feeding into it. The warm, dry air from interior Australia is going to be feeding into it, into these thunderstorms, so they are going to have a field day, that is for sure. Again, it is a bit difficult to understand why some of the thunderstorms aren't going to be firing up into the immediate corner of southeastern Queensland. I mean, they're obviously blessed that they're not going to happen, especially this soon after Christmas, because some of these storms are going to pack a real big punch indeed. But again, Saturday and Sunday looking pretty quiet down there, regardless of how much instability is in the atmosphere. It just looks like the thermodynamic conditions just aren't as good as what they will be in the central regions of Queensland, and thunderstorms will have a much harder time materialising there, which is good news. However, Monday is expected to be a pretty meaty day, that's for sure. I mean, take a look at this. Plenty of severe thunderstorms expected pretty much everywhere across the southeast and the central corners of Queensland. Access G3 calling for a low-pressure system to begin converging along the coastline here, and as such, the rainfall's really going to pipe up. Plenty of moisture is going to be funneled into the southeastern corner of Queensland. We'll likely see some very good lines of thunderstorms materialise here and there. Again, instability in the atmosphere looking sky-high. Convective available potential energy well into the 2300 kind of marker there. Again, that's not the absolute Rolls-Royce of convective available potential energy numbers. That is still what I'd consider pretty high, and certainly conducive for some really good thunderstorms to materialise, but not get ahead of ourselves. This is stuff that happens every month of pretty much every week in pretty much every month of the wet season. So again, it's nothing really to write home about, but still, some really good thunderstorms are expected to materialise. Humidity and temperature values as well looking pretty good. Wind shear values as well looking pretty good as well for these thunderstorms. And then, yeah, back to the rainfall forecast for New Year's Eve. Some good thunderstorms expected into the southeastern corner of Queensland, but just considering the rainfall that's going to be streaming in ashore from the Pacific Ocean here, these thunderstorms will likely be kind of more shower bands tending to rainfall at times, with a couple of embedded thunderstorms in them. Further inland, we'll likely see some more meteor thunderstorms as well. So there's going to be more sort of rainfall lingering around on Tuesday, and as such, rainfall accumulations will likely be in the double digits and probably approaching the kind of mid to high double digits across some locations into the southeastern corner of Queensland. Depending on what rainfall does materialise into the southeastern corner of Queensland, I mean what showers materialise rather, we'll likely be seeing rainfall accumulations between 30 and 60 millimetres on Tuesday afternoon, which leads us very nicely into the next part of our story, which I'll get to in just 30 seconds. But first, I would just like to talk about those rainfall accumulations actually heading out to the rest of the year, basically. So the end of Tuesday, the 31st of December. So this is a rainfall accumulations expected for the remainder of the year, and this is solely from thunderstorms that are going to be blowing up between Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday nights. Peak accumulations around Toowoomba up towards Kingaroy, they're kind of expecting about 3 or 4 nights of thunderstorms there. Not likely to be severe thunderstorms, but the accumulations do add up. About 80 to 90 millimetres expected. Same deal with Brisbane, about 30 to 40 millimetres, the majority of that coming through on Tuesday. Sunshine Coast as well, Monday and Tuesday, rainfall accumulations between 40 and 60 millimetres, probably a little bit higher than that actually across some locations, especially into the mountains and adjacent to the coastline. We'll likely see some heavier rainfall accumulations earlier on, so Friday, Saturday, and Sunday as you get it between Edders Void up to through Dingo and Emerald. Rainfall accumulations there could amount to about 40 to 60 millimetres across some of these places, just depending on what rainfall comes through over the coming couple of days. But again, the storms should die down by around Monday up there. And then up to Claremont and Moranbah, rainfall accumulations between 20 and 40 millimetres expected there. Again, depends on what thunderstorms blow through. They're not expecting 5 straight days of thunderstorms up there. Those storms will be a little bit more hit and miss. And that does it for rainfall accumulations for the remainder of the year across southeastern Queensland and the northeast of New South Wales. Interesting stuff indeed. By the way, northeastern New South Wales accumulations between about 20 and 40 millimetres, slightly higher as you get to the mountainous areas as well outside of Grafton and Lismore, but accumulations there, nothing really standing out. However, if we push this forecast back, we'll still include Tuesday, but for the remainder of the forecast period, take a look at what is expected. And this is a massive flip on the head of the forecast yesterday, which is the deal sealer in me making this forecast update. We were expecting some kind of Coral Sea tropical low or rain funnel to head into this Queensland coastline at some point later on next week, and it was on the forecast initially for the far northern coastline of Queensland around Cairns, and now it's been completely flipped on its head, and we're looking at something around New South Wales or the southeastern corner of Queensland. Some really good rainfall expected, and just to hit it right off the bat, you can see it is reciprocated between the other forecast models as well. So all in all, we are expecting some really good falls here. Let's crack into the details of what is actually expected. So we'll see a low pressure system develop into the or offshore from actually the Queensland New South Wales border around the coastline of Lismore sometime on Wednesday, the first day of 2025. This low pressure system will then act as a rain funnel, dragging in moisture from the Coral Sea and the Pacific Ocean, extending right out to New Caledonia basically, and this will wrap around the backside of this system here and get funneled ashore for locations north of Newcastle. So pretty much anywhere north of Taree throughout Tuesday, Wednesday, and then into Thursday morning, expecting some moderate rainfall, tending heavy at times between Coffs Harbour and Lismore, and then showers and storms extending up into the southeastern corner of Queensland as well. The rainfall here, the low pressure system rather, is then going to dance around for a couple of days by the looks of things throughout Thursday and Friday, and even in towards Saturday. It dances around offshore from the New South Wales coastline and the Queensland coastline, still funneling in those showers, but they'll get progressively lighter and progressively more sparsely placed throughout Friday and then into Saturday before the rainfall completely eases off on Sunday. Again, this is acting pretty much exactly like a Coral Sea tropical low in the sense that it is wrapping itself up with tropical moisture in a tropical fashion. I wouldn't call this a cyclone chance at all. I really don't think it's going to be a cyclone chance, but we don't need a tropical cyclone down in this part of Queensland or New South Wales to cause some significant problems. The rainfall enough from this system is going to be the problem causer, and rainfall accumulations will forget about into the next week of 2025, but if we take a look at rainfall accumulations just from the 31st onwards to about Saturday, so 5-day rainfall accumulations when this low pressure system is expected to be at its most intense, we're going to be seeing some pretty heavy falls. Between Yamba down towards Nambucca Heads, rainfall accumulations will be up to about 300 millimetres. Now, I do feel that this forecast, at least initially, has been a little bit bullish. It's definitely more on the aggressive side, especially considering the contrast to the other forecast models. But I do think, depending on how this system materialises, and considering it is actually a pretty close thing on the forecast, it's only about a week away, and it makes perfect sense that something like this would develop at this time of the year. I am very keen to say that 100 to 150 millimetres can be expected around Coffs Harbour right up to about Yamba and Lismore. Lismore has dried out from the floods that they received a couple of months ago, so again the rainfall up there will actually be quite welcome, and especially into the northeastern corner of New South Wales, just in general the rainfall is going to be quite welcome, but still 300 millimetres probably going to be on the kind of heavier side of what is actually welcome up there. Accumulations shouldn't exceed 250 millimetres, not from this low pressure system. I mean, it is going to be strong and it is going to be lingering for a couple of days, but it is just going to be that little bit too far off the coastline, I feel, to really cause the problems. Of course, the heaviest accumulations will be when this low pressure system initially gets fired up, so Tuesday evening through Wednesday and Thursday, before that rainfall steadily eases off throughout Friday and Saturday. But it is just going to be that constant barrage of showers and 50 to 60 millimetres a day for about 4 days, where that's going to make these rainfall accumulations really begin to add up. Of course, with a low pressure system, we've also got that wind threat here on the backside of the system. The winds are going to be around averaging between 20 and 25 knots, gusting up to about 35 to 40 knots as well. I think the wind forecast that the Eastern Lift has thrown out here is a little bit on the weaker side, but we're also talking about the system when it is going to be at its weakest on Saturday. But yeah, peak wind gusts of about 40 to 45 knots adjacent to the New South Wales coastline here. So when this low pressure system really does begin to wrap itself up, expecting sustained winds of around 30 knots, so nearly gale force, and then those wind gusts up to about 40 to 45 knots through there, coupled with that heavy rainfall. It is going to feel like a very tropical day indeed. Warm temperatures, high humidity, that wind stuff there. It's going to feel like a quintessential tropical low or east coast low materialising offshore from the New South Wales coastline. A very important factor in a forecast like this is taking a look at sea surface temperature values. Now, the East Australian current is pumping, and as such, whatever convection makes itself offshore from New South Wales is going to have a field day blowing up and bringing those showers ashore adjacent to the New South Wales coastline. And that 26-degree isotherm, which is what's required for real tropical moisture and tropical cyclones to materialise, extends as far south as Kempsey and retiree, and as such, the thunderstorms are going to be streaming ashore are going to be picking up moisture right up until they make an effective landfall on the coastline. Sea temperature values are very, very warm indeed, and they're not expected to cool off pretty much at all. And considering the low pressure system will actually be located more sort of offshore from Queensland, where the sea temperatures are around 27 degrees Celsius, that's fully tropical stuff. This system is not going to stop funneling that rainfall ashore. It's going to actually have a really easy time to materialize here. It just might be that wind shear that kind of gets to it and then prevents it from really becoming an organized low pressure system and really funneling some serious rainfall quantities ashore. In short, the forecast is still a little bit too uncertain to actually say exactly what's expected in the way of the nitty-gritty details, and especially in terms of Queensland, it's a little bit harder to tell, but I'd still expect about 100 millimeters or so of rainfall there, possibly a little bit more. We do need to wait a couple more days and see what the forecast suggests over the coming couple of days in terms of what rainfall is exactly expected, but just the heads up that some good falls are expected sometime into the early to middle parts of next week and also into the later parts of next week as well. It'll be very interesting to see exactly how this forecast plays out. I am very keen to see on how this develops over the coming couple of days and what the Bureau of Meteorology also has to say on this system. This is more of a heads up forecast, not an actual exactly what is expected on the forecast, but we will keep it at that, at least for today's forecast update, and revisit that tomorrow on Boxing Day. And you can see in stark contrast to what's expected down into the northeastern corner of New South Wales, there's very little rainfall now on the forecast of the far north of Queensland. I still believe that through showers and thunderstorms, they'll still see about 120 millimeters over the next 10 days, especially around Innisfail and Tully, and there'll be good rainfall accumulations as well as into the Atherton tablelands from showers and thunderstorms that will develop later on this weekend. You can see Saturday and Sunday both expected to be significant storm days, same deal with Monday, easing off though on Tuesday before those storms fire up again into the later parts of the first week of 2025, and then into Saturday and Sunday then. So I do feel like there'll still be some good rainfall accumulations up there, but we're not going to be talking about a rainfall depression bringing another 300 or 400 millimeters up into the far north of Queensland, which I know is going to sound like a bummer to a lot of people watching, especially considering how much I talked up that system yesterday. I did still say that this was a forecast and that this is not a set in stone thing on the forecast. Things can and they will dramatically change, and we have seen that dramatic backflip in the forecast models, and that's just what happens. The forecast models, they take in the wrong information on one particular day and they get the forecast completely wrong, and yesterday's forecast was just a classic case of that. I should have seen through it, and unfortunately we've given a pretty boogie filled forecast in the far north of Queensland. But again, the forecast accuracy up there is only about 20% on the best of times, so it is a very difficult place to give an accurate forecast, and I do hope that the far north Queensland viewers can forgive me for the forecast yesterday. I meant no harm in predicting that kind of rainfall. Anyways, that is all that I have time for, at least for Queensland and New South Wales. We'll just touch on the heat forecast across interior parts of Australia, and especially for today as well, and then I would like to go over into New South Wales and Victoria and just talk about the sport, weather forecast down there. So it is going to be a warm one across interior parts of Western Australia and South Australia, especially today. Perth, however, only expecting a top of about 23 degrees. It's going to be the coldest Christmas in quite a while. Adelaide, a warm top of 34. It's going to be a windy one as well, so that warm temperature is, the warm air is going to really make itself apparent into the Adelaide metro area. You might need to run the air conditioner. It's going to be a warm day as well in Melbourne, 30 degrees, same deal with Canberra as well. It's going to feel really warm into the northern parts of Victoria as well as those temperatures climb in. But preparation for Boxing Day, you can see temperatures up to 42 degrees expected tomorrow into the northern parts of Victoria, and thank goodness that temperature has been back down slightly for Melbourne. Still a top of 37, but it isn't going to be that kind of stifling, awfully hot. It'll still be 32 degrees at 9 p.m. there over in Melbourne though, unfortunately, so the temperatures are going to remain high later on to the night before that cool change kicks in. For Hobart, a top of about 18 expected, a top of 21 expected today. It's actually going to get a little bit warmer across interior parts of the state up through the Derwent Valley up to about 23 or 24. It will feel actually quite warm up there with the humidity. Canberra, top of 30 as we've just talked about. Sydney, a top of 34. The coastal breeze should keep things a little bit cooler, but out into the western suburbs, it looks like we could get a top of about 32 degrees expected out in Penrith. So it will be a warmer one further inland for Sydney, but for the Sydney metro area, it's not looking too hot at all. Brisbane, a top of 29 degrees expected today. It'll be a little bit humid, but that breeze should take the edge off stuff, and then up into the Queensland coastline, just a quintessential sunshine filled day, at least to the Sunshine Coast, and then up into the southern parts of the central areas of Queensland before those showers take over around sort of the Ogmore area, and then extending up through Mackay and Townsville. A couple of showers expected throughout the course of today. Still relatively pleasant tops of 29 and 30 degrees expected for Townsville and Cairns respectively. And then up into the tropical north, Darwin expecting a top of 30, quintessential stuff for this time of the year and this type of weather. Tropical thunderstorms are possible later on to the afternoon and evening, but they shouldn't be too heavy, and as such the Christmas celebrations should run late into the night, especially outdoors, considering the fact that we're not expecting too much in the way of thunderstorms tonight. But yeah, in terms of the Christmas weather forecast, that basically does it for Australia, and then into Boxing Day as well. We'll get to that in just a moment, but we do have that little spin-up expected to materialise offshore from the Cocos-Keeling Islands. Here is a look at it right now. You can see it is just still a convective bubble bath, but we are expecting a weak tropical low and possibly a tropical cyclone as it enters the southwest Indian Ocean basin sometime on Friday or Saturday. The tropical cyclone is possible, but it isn't looking like it's got an exactly a grand chance of developing into a tropical cyclone at all. You can see it kind of meanders around, hovers around before it gets absorbed, or its energy gets absorbed by another tropical low that might materialise offshore from Western Australia. All in all, it's a really complicated forecast, and this is just more of a heads up that we will revisit this in tomorrow morning's forecast update. But yeah, in terms of tropical low activity, it looks like Western Australia is the place to be, because hardly anything is expected across Queensland or the Coral Sea for a good long while by the looks of things, which is interesting stuff, especially for this time of the year. But we will revisit that in tomorrow morning's forecast update. And then for the Sydney to Hobart, which is kicking off tomorrow, it is going to be a quick race, that's for sure. You can see winds expected to be out of the northeast around that 20 to 25 knot mark. The wind gusts, however, up to about 30 to 35 knots, getting really gusty later on to the night. You can see later on Thursday night at around midnight, wind gusts of around 40 knots are expected offshore from the New South Wales coastline. As that cool change converges with the northeasterlies, those wind gusts will pick up dramatically. We'll likely see a line of 50-knot winds sweep across parts of the Tasman Sea later on at Thursday night into early Friday morning. You can see peak wind gusts expected to be at around 5 a.m. Friday morning, of around 46 to 47 knots through here. It is going to get very windy indeed. A couple of showers also expected as that low pressure system moves through, and maybe the odd storm or two. Those wave heights shouldn't be too extreme, just considering the fact that they wouldn't really have had the time to really build. It's just going to be a really quick thing. These waves, they'll really come in, but still peak wave heights of around 3.5 metres are expected. It's quite meaty, but it's nothing crazy for the Sydney to Hobart. That's pretty routine stuff, all things considered. But on the backside of this low pressure system, for the yachts that haven't made it into Hobart by Friday evening, it looks like those waves are really going to jump up as you get rounding out of Port Arthur. Those waves are going to be about 6 to 7 metres offshore, and those wind gusts as well going to be quite violent by the looks of things, averaging around 40 to 50 knots through there. So it is going to get quite blowy. It's certainly going to be a very rough Sydney to Hobart, and likely going to be a lot of pullouts, that's for sure. A very warm start to the Boxing Day test as well over in Melbourne, like I said yesterday, or just a few minutes ago rather, a top of 37 degrees expected tomorrow. But then after that, it's looking pretty cool throughout Friday, Saturday, Sunday and Monday for the remainder of play. It will warm up a little bit more on Monday. You can see a top of about 30 degrees expected for Melbourne on Monday, late maximum as well, before that sea breeze comes through and cools things down. We're expecting a couple of showers as well throughout the course of Friday, so we might have a few rain delays, which is the last thing that we need for the cricket right now. I mean, we're fed up with the rain delays over in Brisbane, and a couple of showers also expected to come through on Saturday afternoon and into Saturday evening as well. Thankfully, we should get enough play in on Saturday for it to be kind of not too much of an impact. A couple of showers also lingering on Sunday, but they should clear out by Sunday morning, and then Monday will be a clear day for play. Anyways, that is all that I have time for today's forecast update. I said it would be a short one, but it's turned out to be pretty much the longest video of the year. So thank you so much for putting up with my voice this morning on Christmas Day. We're not missing a day over in the tropics, or that's at least my goal this wet season over in Australia. I'm a forecasting service to the residents of Australia, and I'm fully committed to that obligation now that I have to give that daily forecast as well, and I love it. I would rather no other job, and I'm truly blessed to have this. So on Merry Christmas, thank you so much for the position that I have been granted this year as Australia's forecasting service. You guys are the reason that I have it. The channel sponsors as well, their names are on screen right now. I'm truly blessed, and this is the best Christmas present that I could have received, at least over the computer. Anyways, thank you so much for watching the forecast update today. We'll be back tomorrow with more detail over in the Queensland and New South Wales rainfall stuff that's expected. That is all from me today, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Have a very Merry Christmas, and goodbye.